live for the first official episode of the Geeky Pastimes podcast. This is a podcast that's going to be coming out every weekday at 9 a.m. UK time. We're going to be talking about gaming news. We're going to be talking about reviews. We're going to be doing fun rants because we always seem to end up doing that. You can catch the recording of this podcast live every day. It's going to be happening on youtube.com/Geeky Pastimes and kick.com/Geeky Pastimes. And if you want to support the podcast, you can become a member in either of those places. So today we're going to be talking about E3 after Ubisoft have pulled out. What does that mean for the conference as a whole? We're going to be talking about Crime Boss Rockay City, which is a new game that came out yesterday. And I have the weird feeling that most people don't even know it exists or don't know that it came out yesterday. So we're going to be talking about that. I'm going to be talking a little bit more about kick.com and just kind of my thoughts on the platform so far. Now I've been streaming on it for a few days and maybe why I've been streaming on it a little bit more than I expected I was going to be. And finally, if we have time, and hopefully there'll be a little bit of audience participation with this, what games would we like to see remastered? Someone asked me that last night when I was streaming, and I can't stop thinking about it. It's a fun thing to speculate on, even if we don't have any power to get any of those made. Good morning to all the people that have just shown up. Good morning, Affers. Good morning, Tony. Hope you're doing well. Good morning, Zeph. I'll very quickly answer Zeph's question. He said, good morning, love the podcasts. Any tips for a solo DMZ player? For those of you who don't know, I spent a long while making lots of DMZ content. That's kind of wound down a little bit. I've kind of done everything I want to do in DMZ at this point. In terms of advice for solo DMZ players, this is a fun question because I get it a lot. Like, I get a lot of comments saying, how can I do this mission in DMZ? How can I complete this tier in DMZ if I'm solo? And my answer traditionally has been find people to play with, which isn't what solo players want to hear, and I know that. But it really is the best way to get something out of DMZ, is if you can find people who are about the same mission as you, then you can go through the missions together. You'll have a lot more fun doing it. You'll have a lot more sort of exciting times. If you're playing solo, you know what's going to happen. You're going to get killed by bots and then you're just dead. You're going to get killed by players and you're always going to be, well, not always, but mostly going to be outnumbered. You're going to really struggle if you've got that kind of situation going on. So if there's any way you can find players, you know, use Discords that you're in. You can use my Discord. That's something that you can join. You can even use tools like Gamerlink that used to be the sponsor of the show. I'm sure there are probably other websites where you can find other people to play with, the official COD Discord if you brave going in there, but try to find other people to play with. If you absolutely cannot find other people to play with and you're playing DMZ solo, you need to set your expectations pretty low. You need to be careful. You need to make sure you've got a suppressed weapon because then you can take out a lot of the bots without like suddenly getting all of them aggroing you. You need to prioritize whenever you're doing a regain, getting a self-revive. So filling your backpack with self-revive, stim pistols, extra plates and stuff like that. And just only ever try to do one mission at a time. Don't try to get ambitious. You know, if you've got a mission where you need to pick something up in exfil, as soon as you get that thing, just get out. Like, don't mess around trying to do other stuff because the chance of another player getting like a hunt squad contract on you or something like that just goes up and up. Solo DMZ is always going to be super difficult. It's always going to be incredibly hard. So if you're going into it solo, you need to sort of accept that you're doing the tough challenge. Good morning, Why So Salty? Good morning, Trix. Hope you're all doing very well. So let's start talking about the first topic of today's podcast, and that is E3. So E3, just for the couple of people that don't know what it is, I mean, if you're listening to a gaming podcast, I imagine a lot of you are kind of aware of it, but it is the Electronics Entertainment Expo. This is a gaming show that is held once a year in Los Angeles, and traditionally, it was an industry thing. Traditionally, it was like a place where people who make and publish games could go and sell their games to people in the business. So like, you know, the people who do buying stuff for Walmart or for Game or Toys R Us, you know. Is Toys R Us dead now or did it come back in America? I don't even know. Anyway, those sort of people would meet and they'd be pitching the games to the shops, essentially. That was the idea behind it. It wasn't open to the public. And then people started doing things like, you know, trying to impress journalists and it became more of a media thing. So they started like making their booths more interesting and exciting. And then they started doing the big press conferences where they'd hold these big shows and they got more and more into a show. Rather than just being like a showcase of products, they became more and more extravagant. And you ended up with a point, which I think a lot of people would see as like the golden years of E3, where you'd have like Microsoft, Nintendo, Sony, all getting up on a big stage and announcing all of their games for the next, the next year. And sometimes they'd be announcing new consoles. They'd always traditionally have a couple of surprises in there, a couple of reveals. It was a very exciting time for most gamers. And then, like, over the years, various things have happened. E3 has tried moving before. They've shut down for a few years before. And the big thing that I think really ruined them, as aside from all of the various controversies about what the company that runs E3, I think it's called the ESA, about how they run it and how people don't really like the way they run it, and the stuff that they used to do. But, like, aside from all of that stuff, the big thing that killed it really was the pandemic. Like, the pandemic happened. And people were like, there's no way I'm going to a big show filled with like 100,000 people. That's insane. So instead, people were like, let's do digital events. And companies like Nintendo had already been doing Nintendo Directs. They'd kind of backed away from E3 anyway, because they were like, hey, we're going to have like our own Nintendo Direct. You can pre-record it. You've got everything ready to go. You can make it as slick as you want, and you can do it whenever you want. So, Nintendo Directs happen every 2 months or so now. Sometimes even more frequently than that. And they can control it. They don't have to compete for attention with all of the others. It's like a pretty cool deal. And Microsoft very quickly started being like, hey, we don't really need to do this in E3. We have our own building like over the road. So we're going to do our own thing. And they would have a presence on the show floor, but they would also do their own thing over the road. And then, other companies started doing the direct type way of doing it. PlayStation started their PlayStation Directs. Because of the pandemic, I think it sort of accelerated that, where every company was like, hey, we can do all of this digitally. We don't need to spend loads of money flying people out to LA. We don't need to spend money on set design. We don't need to spend money on celebrities coming out and stuff like that. Instead, they can just do it in a way that they completely control, is much, much cheaper, and they can do it whenever they want. And they reach audiences directly, because while E3, I think most people who are super into video gaming news sort of see E3 as the holy grail of like things to do, a lot of people who just play games casually will never hear of it, will never see it. And if they did hear of it, they wouldn't be interested, because they'd be like, oh, it's a show just about games. Like, I'm not that into games. I'm not going to watch that. Oh, the shows go on for like an hour and a half. Like, no, not interested in that. But the little directs, little Nintendo Directs and stuff, they essentially can come out whenever in the year, and then they get split up into trailers, and people see them on YouTube, people see them on Twitch, people see them, everywhere else. And I think that was something that a lot of companies just realized, oh, this is better. And, over time, Ubisoft, as Why So Salty said, Ubisoft have Ubisoft Forward, EA have EA Play. Most of the big studios or publishers have kind of started doing their own thing. The Devolver Digital conference. They've all kind of started doing their own thing. And now E3's trying to like claw some of that back. And we've had Jeff Keighley, who's like, a big sort of celebrity within the gaming news space, organising his own thing called Summer Game Fest, that originally was kind of just an umbrella where he claimed every digital show was his, which was a bit weird. But now they've started doing stage shows. He does the Game Awards in December, then he does Summer Games Fest in the summer. And he started having game announcements there, where instead of it being discrete shows, it's much more like, hey, everyone can share a stage together. That means people don't have to pay for the entire show. People aren't paying to get everyone out there and stuff like that. Instead, it's like, if you've only got, 20 minutes of games to show, you can just do that as part of Summer Games Fest, which I think's a good idea. Anyway, so yeah, E3's trying to come back. E3's trying to claw stuff back. They've had some crazy ideas. They've talked about focusing on celebrity endorsements, which is really weird, like, oh, you could have a celebrity, you could have like Snoop Dogg playing your game on stage. Like, that'll be a big deal. We'll have influencers posting about it. This year they've talked about having a big bar in the middle of it, as if like drinking at these events is a good idea. Some of you might have heard what happened at GDC, where there was a lot of kind of sexual harassment, stuff like that going on, even to the point of people roofing people. Like, there's really bad stuff happening at GDC. And that's just the Game Developers Conference. There's not like people from the public there or anything, generally. But yeah, so E3 have decided that doubling down on drinking is a good idea for some reason. And then lots of the big studios were like, yeah, we're not going to do E3 this year. So like Microsoft said they weren't going to do it. Nintendo haven't done it for a while anyway. Sony have said they aren't going to do it. And the big like publisher that said they were going to do it was Ubisoft. And then Ubisoft have come out and said, yeah, we're not going to do that either. So that kind of sucks for E3 that they've now got a big gaming show supposedly happening in June, which isn't that far away. In the grand scheme of things, we're getting to the end of March now. So what? We've got 3 months until E3 is meant to be happening. and they're already sort of like struggling to think of who's even going to be there. Like, which big publishers are going to be there? Companies like Activision that don't normally have a show. EA, I imagine, will just do their own EA Play thing like they have done for a while. Like, who's actually going to be at E3? It kind of sucks. And like, there's an interesting question there of like, is that a bad thing? Like, do we need E3? Like, if all of the other companies do their own shows around that time anyway, us people who don't get to go to these shows, we kind of get the same experience. I've never been to E3. Like, previously, I used to be a teacher and I was always working when E3 was on. And then in the last few years, obviously, there's been the pandemic and stuff like that. So I've never had the opportunity to get out there and go. But I have been to Gamescom a couple of times, and I've always heard that Gamescom, for members of the public, for streamers and content creators and stuff, Gamescom's better because Gamescom is more like a gaming festival. You know, there's lots and lots of days of it. You have loads and loads of different, like, literally, they have it in the Kohlmesse, which is like a massive conference center in Cologne in Germany. And they have, like, they're like huge hangars, essentially. And they have multiple of them just for Gamescom. And so, you know, there'll be a massive indie games one. There'll be a massive one that's mostly like EA and Microsoft. Then there'll be a massive one that's like Ubisoft and then Activision or something. There's a lot of space there, lots of opportunity to play games and stuff. Like, Gamescom's been kind of becoming the international event for fans to go play new games before they come out and stuff like that. And I think they have like triple the capacity of E3. And then, yeah, all of the other shows are online anyway. So you're just going to watch them, aren't you? So it's a little bit of a weird situation. It's a little bit of a kind of, why do we need E3? Like, what's it actually for? I still think, for me, like, completely selfishly, there's a lot of value in having a week of announcements. I really like that exciting week where it's like, normally you have like the Microsoft conference on Sunday night, and then you'll have the Sony conference on Monday night, and then you have the Nintendo conference on Tuesday night. And it's like, you've got every day, you've got loads of exciting stuff, and then for the rest of the week, you get all of like the previews and stuff from the journalists who actually get to go out there and play the games. Like, that is a super fun week. Like, it's super fun having all of this stuff. But I can see it from the developers' perspective as well, and the publishers, that a lot of games just get lost in that. A lot of games just kind of get ignored because there's so many massive announcements. And a lot of the time, there's like some huge announcement. You know, there's like one or two every year. Massive announcement that takes everyone by surprise. And then all of those smaller games just kind of get forgotten about. You get a lot of times where publishers have to do like montage things where it's like, hey, look at all of these games we've got coming out in the summer. And there's like 20 games that have like 10 seconds each. And it's like, you're not going to remember each of those. You're not really going to get a good look at them. Whereas when they do their own shows and they're doing lots and lots of shows across the year, then you can have like an Xbox Originals type thing, an Xbox Indie type thing, and then you can have a show dedicated to Starfield and a show dedicated to Redfall. And Nintendo obviously do their Indies thing, their third party thing, and their like Zelda thing or their Pokemon thing, which means that everyone gets a little bit more focus. And there's also the problem of anticipation and hype that, like, I'm one of the people that is very susceptible to hype, and I get very, very hyped up about E3. I get hyped up about all those shows, so I'm a big theme park fan as well, and Disney do a show every 2 years, so you can imagine the anticipation before D23 is their big show, where they show off everything that's going to come to the parks, and they also talk about films and stuff. I don't care about that. But they talk about everything that's coming to the parks, and it's only every 2 years that when it happens, everyone's like, oh my god, what are they going to announce? Like, are they going to announce a new theme park? Are they going to announce like new massive rides and stuff? And then like this year, they announced like basically nothing. They were like, oh, Splash Mountain's getting rethemed. And we're like, yeah, we already knew about that. You'd already talked about it. And then they're like, and we're building some stuff in Epcot. It's like, yeah, you said you were building more than that 2 years ago, and then you cancelled most of it. And they just didn't have anything really to announce, and it was like super disappointing. And the same thing happens in games, you know, whenever Microsoft bring out a conference, everyone's like, oh, you know, now that they own Bethesda especially, now it's like, oh, we're going to see like Elder Scrolls 6 or 7 or whatever it's going to be, or we're going to see like the new Perfect Dark from the Initiative, or we're going to see a new Gears of War or a new Forza or whatever. And then when those games don't happen, people are like, oh, that kind of sucks. And then same thing with Sony, you know, whenever Sony get up on the stage, people are like, oh, there's going to be a new Last of Us, there's going to be a new Metal Gear Solid, there's going to be a new like Motorstorm or something. You know, everyone has their things that they kind of hope will get announced at every one of these, and then don't. Then Nintendo, it's always like, they're going to announce the new Switch, they're going to announce the next console, and obviously they never will. I mean, I'm sure they actually will at some point, but it's, yeah, you get like disappointed constantly by these things, and that kind of sucks. Like, it's kind of a letdown, and it's not really even the publisher's fault. sometimes it is. Like EA did a show years ago, and they didn't have. I don't think they had like any games to show off. They were all doing stuff like, "Hey, we've got loads of cool games in development, and we're going to show you an early peek at them." And one of them was like Battlefield, that ended up being Battlefield 2042, and it was literally just like a grey textureless plane. And they had some soldiers running across it, and they were like, "This is gonna be the most advanced Battlefield ever." And it's like, then you know what we got from that. We got Battlefield 2042, which wasn't really anything like it. You know, this focus seemed to be, oh look, there's loads of soldiers sprinting across, and it's like, didn't really get much of that happening. I guess we got the AI soldiers in it a bit. And then they had some amazing racing game where there was like cars and motorbikes and then like loads of crazy vehicles all racing at the same time. And there was like hundreds of them going across terrain. That, as far as I know, never happened. That got cancelled. And then, you know, Star Wars 1313. I think they announced Fallen Order at that E3 as well, but they literally just cut to the game director of Respawn, Vince Zampella, and being like, they sort of focused on him in the audience, and they were like, "Hey, we heard you've got something to announce." He's like, "Yeah, we're making a game called Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, and I can't tell you anything about it yet." It's like, that was it. That was like the reveal of Fallen Order. And it's like, oh my God, that sucks. So yeah, I can understand why, like, both sides of this. It's an exciting week for fans, but it's also kind of a terrible week in lots of ways for fans as well as for developers and stuff like that. People, you know, are inevitably going to get let down, which kind of sucks. But talking of games that sometimes get overlooked, the other thing I wanted to, or one of the other things I wanted to talk about today, was Crime Boss Rockay City. Now, immediately after this sort of podcast recording, this live stream, I'm actually going to be streaming some Crime Boss Rockay City, because this game is, I'm not going to say awesome. I don't want to use hyperbole here. I don't want to be like super over the top. But Crime Boss Rockay City is a lot of fun. And it definitely is suffering from the similar sort of things to what Payday suffered from. And I think they've tried really hard to make it like not compared to Payday, but it is Payday, basically. So, for anyone who hasn't seen Crime Boss Rockay City, this is a game that's being made by, it's being published by 505 Games, who also published Payday, strangely. And it is a game where you and up to 3 of your friends, or you can play this solo and have AI companions with you, and a bit more on that later. You go into situations in Miami, it all seems to be set in Miami, where you're going to be normally trying to steal something. So the basic idea is you set up your crew, you decide what weapons you're going to take in, stuff like that. All of your crew have different perks and things like that. And then you go and you say, okay, we're going to rob this strip mall, or we're going to rob this warehouse, or we're going to rob whatever. And you go over there. There's normally maybe some gangs, maybe some police. You can sneak around them at the beginning. You can keep your gun hidden. You can deactivate cameras. You can pick locks and stuff like that. Try to steal stuff sneakily. And at some point, something will probably go wrong and someone will see you. And then you'll start getting attacked by the guards or the gangs that are there. And if you cause too much of a ruckus, then more police are going to come in, like SWAT vans are going to start pouring in, and they're all going to start attacking you, and it's going to turn into a thing where basically you're fighting waves of police until you can get out with the stolen goods. Now that could also exactly describe Payday. Like, I'm pretty sure that's precisely, that's Payday. But the game's genuinely quite fun. Like, the game is cool. Its big, like, unique selling point, the big thing that they've used to separate it from Payday, really, is the voice cast. That they've got like Michael Madsen, they've got Michael Rooker, they've got who else is in there? Loads of people. Vanilla Ice, Chuck Norris, I think Kim Basinger. There's like loads of famous people in this as like the main characters who sort of push the stories forwards. And there is this kind of interesting campaign where you get a map and you've got like each day you can do a mission or two, and you can also try and take over territory where you do these little kind of team deathmatch style fights. There's like a few cool little twists like that. And then, like I said, then you can do some of the stuff. If you want to do the campaign, that's one thing that's completely separate. Or you can play co-op where you're just trying to get as much money as possible, because then you can spend it on upgrades and guns and stuff like that. I think it's pretty cool. And like, it looks fairly good. It doesn't look amazing, but it looks fairly good. It's very bright and colourful because it's got the whole like Miami Vice type thing, which I quite like. And it sounds good. I think the gunplay is really good. Like, it genuinely, the weapons feel really good to use. They have a lot of recoil, which makes them kind of tricky to use. And obviously, you can get perks and modifiers that reduce that a little bit. But, like, you know, you shoot someone with a magnum and they go flying back. There is a bit of that same sort of thing as what you have in Payday, where, like, they make the tougher enemies just like bullet sponges. So you have to put loads and loads of shots into them. And I'm not a big fan of that. But other than that, you know, it's cool. The environments are pretty big sometimes. When you're doing the stealthy bits, there's not like tons of options for stealth, but there's like a little bit of kind of thinking about how you're going to do stuff. It's cool. I like it. It's a fun time. The big problem with it that I've seen so far after just playing it, I played it for like 2 hours last night, was that I've only been playing it for 2 hours and I've maybe done essentially the same mission like 4 times. Like, there's one where you're going to a warehouse, it's always the same warehouse. Or there's one where you're going to, like, a beachfront property, it's always the same beachfront property. It's like, there doesn't seem to be many maps. And this was exactly the same problem that Payday 2 had when it launched. That Payday 2 started up, it had, like, loads of these cool mechanics and features and stuff like that, but it only had, like, a handful of maps. It only had a handful of objectives. And then over time, they added loads more to it. You know, it became kind of almost a live service game where they just kept on adding more missions, kept on adding more characters and stuff. I'm not sure whether they're going to do that with Crime Boss Rockay City. I haven't really heard how much they're going to add in future. I assume that they'll add some stuff, but I also don't think this is going to be the new Payday. Partly because there is a new Payday coming, Payday 3, and it's coming from the same publisher, which is slightly weird. So it's a strange thing. If you get a chance to play Crime Boss Rockay City and you love Payday, I definitely think there's fun to be had. If you can play it with friends and stuff like that, it's awesome. I'm going to be streaming it, like I said, straight after this stream. I will hop on. I'll show you the game. I'll show you a little bit of the single player. I have given a few codes to a couple of my friends. So this evening we'll be playing the co-op. Today I'll probably be playing single player. This evening we'll be playing some of the co-op and seeing what that's like. I know Jack Frags has a code as well, so maybe we'll be able to get in some games with Jack. That would be awesome. So yeah, we'll try and showcase it. I'm enjoying it. I think it's a fun game. I think it's very likely to get overlooked, though. I think there's a decent chance that people aren't going to play this, mostly because it's just not been advertised. It's not been shown off. It's not like all of the gaming sites aren't talking about it. I saw when I was streaming on Kick last night, it didn't even have a category for it, as if the people who have made Kick or who are running Kick didn't actually know that it was a thing, which kind of sucks. Now, another game, and I didn't actually put this on the description, but I'll have to add it in not posthumously, I don't know, podcastly? I don't know what the word is for that. Another game, actually, that I was playing before I move on is Deceive Inc. This was a game that a few of you had talked to me about, and I was kind of curious about. Good morning, Fogger. Just saw Fogger popped up in Kick. Yeah, it's Deceive Inc. is an interesting game. It is a sort of stealth heist game, which is a little bit a weird way of describing it. But basically, it's kind of cartoony. It's almost like Team Fortress 2 graphics. And you get put into, when you're playing solo at least, you get put into a massive map with 10 players, and all of you have the same objective. There is a vault. You have to get in that vault, steal something from the vault, and then get to an exfil. But everyone's trying to do the same thing. And to do that, you've got to get like uniforms off other members of staff, so you can get into different areas. There's like 4 levels of uniform, 3 levels of uniform that you can get. So you can get you can become part of like the maid staff, so you've got a green outfit, the catering staff type kind of people, or you can be a security guard, so you get a blue outfit, or you can be a researcher, so you get a purple outfit. Slowly getting like further into each of these maps. You can find key cards, which mean that you can unlock doors super easily, or you can hack the doors using intel, and you find intel everywhere. And the big kind of twist on it, the objective, you have to unlock 3 computers, which will then unlock the vault. It doesn't matter who unlocks the 3 computers, so 3 different people could unlock them, 1 person could do all of them, it doesn't really matter. But once those 3 things have been hacked, then the vault doors open, and then it's basically the first person to get in there, they grab something. Once they've grabbed something, it highlights where they are to everyone else. They have to try and get to the extraction without getting killed. And the big sort of twist comes from whenever you stand still for a while, you'll take on a disguise. So you'll look like an NPC. And when you're moving around, you move like an NPC. which is pretty cool because that means that whenever you're playing, you're constantly looking at all of the other AI around the map, trying to work out which one of them are players. And sometimes people are terrible and they're moving around in a way that the AI just doesn't. You know, like I do. I jump off balconies and things like that. And obviously, if you see someone like that, then you can whip out a gun, and there's loads of different guns, loads of different abilities, and you can try and shoot them. But as soon as you start shooting, that breaks your disguise too. So then someone else might see you and like third party you. So there's this weird thing of like sometimes you know there's another player, they know that you're another player, but you don't want to start shooting each other because then you might give each other away to someone else. So you're trying to like find a situation on the map where you can take them down without being seen. That's all kind of interesting. I kind of like that. And you can change costumes at any time. And some of the gadgets do cool things like, you know, you can track other players, or you can even like hide as like an object. You can scan any object in the game and become that. So become a chair or whatever. So you can just hide in a room waiting for someone to pass, and you can shoot them in the back. It's a super interesting game. I think like at the moment there's some problems with it, like because people are quite tanky, you can take a lot of bullets. It's not so much about hiding at the moment as it is about just being a better shot. So if you can shoot someone well, you can just essentially sprint around and kill everyone, and you could just take them down. There's a lot of like, there's not much recoil or anything like that, so it's like perfect hip fire, a bit like Counter-Strike type thing. So you're like running around and sort of like just tapping on people's heads to kill them. That, I think they could almost make the time to kill much faster. So it's like you are trying to assassinate other people. You're trying really hard to stay hidden because you know as soon as you give away that you're a player, someone could just like kill you. I think that would probably be more interesting, but I don't know. Anyway, so that's the single player. And then there is a free player version where each team has free player on. And it's the same thing, but you're kind of working as a team. So obviously one person could be keeping watch with like a sniper rifle or something while the other two try and get objectives done. It's kind of cool. It's kind of interesting. So yeah, that is Deceiving. And that is also out right now. I think that's actually out on consoles as well. That's out on Crime Boss Rockay City, as far as I know, is only out on the Epic Store on PC right now. But Deceiving, I'm pretty sure, is out on PC and PlayStation as well. Sorry, just having a bit of juice. So, the next thing that I wanted to talk about after that was Kick. And I saw someone talking in Why So Salty was saying about Kick in the chat. So, we've talked about this a couple of times lately, but Kick is, for anyone who doesn't know, it's a new streaming platform. It is advertising itself like its big positives are, first of all, the streaming quality is insanely good. For using the same bitrate as what you use on YouTube, you get a much better picture because they're doing some kind of fancy encoding or decoding that makes it look nice. Apparently, it doesn't scale very well, so they probably won't be able to do that forever. But right now, it looks cool. And the big thing is that for creators who are on Kick, you get 95% of the revenue. So if right now someone became a member on my YouTube channel, which you can, and it's my favorite way for people to support me, so please do, YouTube would take 30% of that money. So if you do the middle membership tier on YouTube, which I think is £5, they will take 30% of that, which is what? So I would get £3.50 and they would get £1.50 of your money. That's how that works. On Twitch, it's 50-50. So for a £5 sub, Twitch gets £2.50, the creator gets £2.50. On Kick, they're doing a split where it's 95% to the creator, 5% to them. So for that same £5, I would get like £4.80, something like that, and they would get 20 pence. Now, obviously, that's not sustainable. Obviously, that's not something they can do forever. I think lots of people are kind of trying out Kick right now, and that's what I'm doing, because it's like you can make some money right now doing it. You can make some money. It's got some fun community features, like you get badges for the first people who have followed. You can give them the like OG badges that then keep forever, and then you get badges for like being a VIP like you do on Twitch. You get badges for being like one of the first people to have a sub. There's leaderboards for gifted subs. All of that kind of stuff is on there. There's a couple of cool innovations, actually. It's mostly a copy of Twitch, but there's a couple of cool innovations. Like you can react to people's chat messages, which I quite like. So, you know, if someone's done a chat message that's funny, you can react to that, which I quite like that. That's pretty cool. That is in actually leave a reaction on that message. I think that's kind of cool. Anyway, the big kind of controversy with Kick is the people who are behind it. So it's Trainwrecks TV, who's a content creator, who is also heavily involved in a company called Stake.com, who are like a crypto online gambling company. You know, shady stuff. I'm very much opposed to online gambling. Not as in I just wouldn't do it myself, which I wouldn't, but also I think other people probably shouldn't. I think it's, you know, socially a bad thing. because it's very manipulative. And we talked about this a lot the other day, but essentially, like, online gambling is all about making you think that you can make money. It plays on the most vulnerable people, and they use creators in a very unethical way, where they show creators making a huge amount of money, because then you think you'll be able to make that money too, because even though you don't have the same odds necessarily as those creators do. And then, you know, people lose a lot of money and get themselves in a lot of financial trouble because of it. It like literally ruins lives. So stake.com, very bad, I think. And they are the primary investors in kick.com. And kick.com is obviously not making any money because they're giving creators 95% of the money. And they don't run any ads. There's no ads on kick.com. So where's that money coming from? Obviously, they're trying to encourage people to use the platform, to download the app. The iOS app's out. I think the Android app is meant to be coming out sometime soon. I'm not sure whether it's out yet or not. It's sometime this week. And they are hoping that you will download the app, watch your favorite content creators. You know, you can watch me over there, and then you will get curious about other channels, and you'll stumble across their gambling, which is always heavily featured. You know, it's always one of the featured streams is gambling. One of the top categories is always gambling. And they will hope that you'll go check that out and then get involved in gambling and then ruin your life. And that's a kind of a worry, isn't it? That's kind of a problem. So why am I doing it? Why am I streaming on Kick? I'm streaming on Kick right now. Right now I'm streaming to both YouTube and Kick because both platforms are fine with that. They're not like Twitch. And I'll be streaming on Kick quite a lot over the next few weeks. And the reason for that is mostly because you can make money on it. And I don't think I need to sort of beat around a bush with that. As a content creator that does this full time, I need to make money. I don't have any big sponsorships going at the moment. I would like to make money. Kick gives me a chance to make more money than usual. Is there a problem of I'm introducing my audience over to online gambling? Yes. Yeah, there is. I kind of hope that because my audience aren't kids, that most of you are more kind of savvy to that kind of thing and you won't get suckered into it. But it is still a risk, and it's something I'm uncomfortable about. I'm not a big fan of that side of it. But, you know, with any of these things, like whenever you take on a sponsorship, you've always got to, like, balance, okay, what's the pros, what's the cons, like, what's the benefits, what's the risk? And I was in a sort of brief Twitter conversation with a couple of other people who are using Kick, like Doc Fox and Stallion, and they were kind of saying, like, they don't control what their audience does. They don't control what their audience wants to spend their money on, and they shouldn't try. So they are just there, you know, where they want to be. And I started justifying it in my own head of maybe if I'm on Kick, some people will watch me instead of watching online gambling. So maybe I'm doing a social good. I mean, that's kind of twisting it a bit. But yeah, it's a difficult thing, and it's not a perfect situation for sure. There are concerns, heavy concerns about it. But as a streaming platform, as someone that streamed on Kick for a while there's many annoyances because it's a new platform, there's also a lot of pretty cool stuff on there. So I really kind of like the way it looks. Sorry, I just doubled up there because I just loaded up Kick to look at it. It doesn't have many of the things that Twitch does, so it doesn't have loads of, like, you know, you can't run ads, you can't do lots of stuff like it with an API, you can't do fancy alerts and stuff. But that's meant there's this kind of Spartan feeling about it, which is kind of cool. Like, it kind of looks good. So yeah, it's an interesting thing at the moment. The stream quality is insanely good. Like, for the same bitrate, it looks amazing. There's some problems with, like, you know, moderation's a little bit harder. There's no separate moderator page. There's some issues with, like, games not appearing in the list. You know, like Crime Boss Rockay City isn't on there. So if you stream it, you have to stream on, like, games and others. And obviously there's a lot less viewers on there. You know, overall, there's a lot less people watching on Kick. So if I get, like, 10 viewers on Kick, I'm doing all right. Whereas, you know, like, if I had 10 viewers on YouTube or Twitch, it wouldn't be so good. So it's an interesting thing. But I'm definitely still intrigued in it enough that I'm going to keep on streaming there for a while. I just really hope that they fix some of the smaller problems, like games not showing up. Oh, they've added Crime Boss Rockay City today, so that's good. Yeah, some of those smaller games not showing up, I hope they fix all of that stuff, because that is kind of irritating. But we'll see how it goes. Do let me know in chat. What we'll probably do with each of these podcasts is towards the end of the episode, I'll do a bit more like engaging with things that people have said, things that people have asked, things have chipped in with. So if you've got any questions or you've got any thoughts on any of the stuff we're talking about, please do say in chat, and then we'll talk about all of that stuff at the end. But yeah, right now with Kick, I'm like, I think it's pretty good. I think it's, as a streamer, as a viewer, I think it's a pretty good experience right now. I'm intrigued to see where it goes. I did see Tactical Brit Lackey posting yesterday on Twitter saying that, like, oh, in 6 months to a year, it'll be dead. So, like, what's the point of being a part of it? And he was saying, he understood it's like, get the money, get the bag. And it's kind of, yeah, that's it. Like, if Kick doesn't stick around for ages, I don't really care. Like, if it went under, I'll just stick to just doing YouTube. But right now, it's something extra to YouTube. I definitely wouldn't suggest anyone who already had a following on YouTube or Twitch, I 100% wouldn't move over to Kick. That would be a bad idea. Moving 100% over to Kick would be a terrible idea, because what will end up happening is you'll build up a community on there, probably make money for a few months, and then Kick will shut down or change in a way where it's not as good anymore, and people don't want to watch there, or streaming isn't fun there, or it's not lucrative or whatever. And then you'll end up kind of in trouble, because your community will be there, and trying to get a community to move platforms is impossibly difficult. I tried to get people to move over from Twitch to YouTube. Barely anyone did. When I went from streaming mostly on Twitch to streaming mostly on YouTube, nearly all of the people who watch me on YouTube now are like new viewers. There's a handful of people who came over from Twitch. So it is a very difficult thing to do. So yeah, definitely wouldn't advise making Kick your main platform, but since it's happy for restreaming and stuff like that, why not stream on both? Now, that being said, there is actually one reason I won't be able to do much restreaming on it soon, is that YouTube have started talking about the AV1 codec, and this is going to get a little bit technical, but only for about 30 seconds. So when you're streaming, you can encode your video in different ways, and you can use things like NVIDIA has their own codec. There's one that uses processor more, like what's called H.264. There's H.265, which has better, like better in terms of a smaller file size, as it were, or like lower bit rate but higher quality. But it's a lot more expensive to actually encode. Lots of different things going on like that. And one of the big new sort of advances in that in recent years has been AV1. And AV1 is a new way of encoding stuff. Intel GPUs can do it. The 40 series NVIDIA cards can do it. I'm not sure which AMD cards can do it, but I'm not sure. You can do it on a CPU in theory, but it's like super expensive to do on a processor. So we're on a CPU. So most people won't be able to do that. But anyway, so you can do it with certain more modern graphics cards, and it results in a much higher quality for a much lower bit rate. So someone was doing a test on YouTube because they got access to an early version of OBS, and they had like insane quality, like the same bit rate that I do, but they were putting out a 4K stream on it, or doing a 1440p 60 frames a second stream on half the bit rate I currently use, and it was looking crisp. And that's amazing. Lots of you will know that if you watch my Call of Duty streams on YouTube, the quality is nowhere near as good as like Tactical Brit or Jack Frags or Broken Machine. And none of that's to do with the PC quality. All of that's to do with their connection quality. My upload speed, I'm capped at about 10K. I can't do any higher than that. And that means that I can't give a crisp image at 1440p. I have to kind of do it at 1080p, which looks rubbish on YouTube because of the way YouTube encodes stuff. But this AV1 thing will let me put stuff up at 1440p, 60 frames a second, and it will look beautiful, which I'm very excited about. I've actually ordered an Intel GPU just to be able to do this. The cheapest Intel GPU. It was like 150 quid, and that should be coming sometime today, so I'm excited about that. So yeah, once OBS gets its update where you can encode with AV1, and YouTube starts accepting AV1 for streams, which I'm not sure if it does already, and Twitch apparently are going to start doing it as well at some point, then I will be able to do really crisp YouTube streams. But then I've got the problem that Kick, being a new platform, still finding their feet, they haven't said anything about accepting AV1 encoding, so I won't be able to restream to both YouTube and Kick. So that kind of sucks. So when I'm doing that, I'll have like crisp YouTube streams and then separate, still crisp, but not being restreamed, Kick streams, which will be kind of annoying. Hopefully they'll do it. Afa's just said, still no fiber providers in your area. Yeah, like I've got the situation that a lot of the people have in the UK, where we have what's called FTC, fiber to the cabinet, which means we have fiber optic lines that go to the cabinet at the end of the street, which is, a few hundred feet away from me, and then copper lines that go from the cabinet to our house. That means obviously the connection speed is entirely limited by those copper lines. So we get about 80 down and 10, 12 up, which is rubbish. Just bad for streaming. At some point, we'll get fiber all the way to our house, but they've said at the moment they're going to start doing the work in October of this year. They actually originally said April of 2021, and they keep putting it back. So right now it's October of this year, and they said it'll take months to complete. So, when they say October of this year, it could be that's for the whole area, and then it could be like another 6 months before I end up actually getting it. So it'll be a while. Once I get that, then all of my streams will be super crisp, and that'll be lovely. But right now, it kind of sucks. That's why when there's a new Call of Duty update, it takes me so long to download it. It sucks. It's really, really annoying. But such is life. So yeah, that's a problem of Kick. Lame. FTTP is awesome. This is AFAS again. I moved from Virgin to 500 up and down. Yeah, so I used to have Virgin, and I can get 500 down on Virgin and about 100 up, which sounds great. But the problem with Virgin, at least in my area, is that the line quality is terrible. And supposedly, this is a well-known problem. I've actually spoken to engineers at Virgin Broadband who have talked about this, that they essentially want to advertise the highest speeds possible. And they don't really care about things like, jitter and what I suffered from, which was packet burst, because they don't show up very often. If people are just like downloading things and they're watching streams, it doesn't act like Netflix and YouTube and stuff. It doesn't affect it at all, having problems like that. But if you're doing online gaming, it can have a big problem. And Warzone used to be one of the few games that actually had an icon that showed you what it was. I used to get this thing when I was on Virgin, where I'd be, playing, and it would feel like everything slowed down for a second, then sped up for a second, then slowed down for a second, then sped up for a second. And it was because essentially all of the information going to and from the server was getting held up at the cabinet, the hardware in the cabinet, and then getting sent to my house in like a group, essentially, getting sent in like a burst. So you would get all the information at once, and it meant that the gameplay never felt smooth. It was super annoying. I'd also have problems when I was streaming that sometimes the bitrate would start like fluctuating wildly because of however their connection was working. So that meant sometimes streams would start buffering for people. Sometimes there'd be problems where the quality would like go down randomly. Weirdly, it sounds like it'd always be a good idea to send the highest bitrate possible to your whatever you call it, encoder, whoever you're doing it, the streaming software. I just realized my frame on my camera is all wonky. No one's told me that. But yeah, there we go. I can move that now. There we go. Why was it all wonky? Very strange. Yeah, so if you send too much sometimes, too high bit rates, some services like Twitch and Kick will cause massive problems with that, and it'll just either reduce the quality of your stream massively because their encoder can't cope with that amount of data coming in, or they'll just shut your stream down, which is what Kick did yesterday. That's why when I was streaming yesterday on Kick, people got like 36 notifications that I was going live, because I was trying to stream at 10K because I was restreaming my YouTube stream, and Kick won't accept anything over 8K, so every time it went up to 10K, they just shut the stream down and restarted it, and it was just like constantly happening, which sucks. So yeah, Virgin, very, very annoying. Very high speeds I can get on Virgin because they have their own fiber network, so that does come straight to the house. But the line quality is just not worth it. I'd rather have slow downloads and uploads rather than a connection that I can't rely on. So that sucks. Honkin said he's lucky he doesn't get any dips in connection as the cabinet's only 15 feet away and only 4 properties feed off it. The countryside has its perks, yeah, for sure. It does feel ridiculous. I live in a city. I know it's not a big city, but I live in a city in the UK, and we don't have fibre. And my parents live out in the countryside in the middle of nowhere, and they have fibre. Like, they can get it. They can get a better internet connection than I can. And I think it's because the government's done lots of subsidies to, like, encourage smaller companies to sort out fibre for, like, small communities. And they've assumed that OpenReach will just sort out the cities quickly. But now, because there's all of these subsidies, and there's so many companies trying to grab those subsidies, the rural places have got fast internet way faster than a lot of people in cities have. So yeah, absolutely sucks. But I hated Virgin. I hated being with Virgin. Didn't like their customer support, didn't like the service, the connection. The only thing I liked was that when there was a new Call of Duty update, I could download it really fast. That was like pretty much the only big perk of being on Virgin. And you know, that's less important now. I think I'm definitely, as a creator, I'm moving away from doing time sensitive stuff a little bit. So I used to be like, as soon as a new Call of Duty update came out, I'd be like, as soon as they posted a blog post about it, I'd try and get a video up as fast as possible, even though they normally post those when I'm eating my dinner. So I'd often like let my dinner go cold while I rushed upstairs to record a video, upload it as fast as possible. And then whenever a new Call of Duty update came out, whether it's 5 a.m. my time or it was the evening or whenever, I would make sure I had a stream scheduled for it. I'd make sure I'd like download it straight away so I could be like one of the first people to be streaming whatever the new stuff was. And it was like, occasionally it worked. Like occasionally I got lots of views for stuff, but more often than not, it didn't really work out in terms of views because obviously there's a lot of competition at those times. Loads of people are streaming those things. And it just caused loads of stress. Then I'd have loads of technical problems. I'd be stressed, so I'd be like less entertaining, maybe less happy. I'd have like, you know, struggling to get other people online. We'd all be waiting for each other to download stuff. It was just a pain. So I'm kind of done with that, I think. I'm kind of done with the idea of thinking, oh, I need to be live as soon as it all happens. I need to be like the first to try out an Easter egg. I need to be the first to try out a new raid. I need to be the first to try out, you know, a new zombies map or whatever it is. I'll still like, you know, I'll stream it when I can, as you know, as probably as early as I can, but I'm not going to be stressing about whether I'm like the first person to do it, because I hardly ever am in terms of like the first person to download something or the first person to get into something. So it's like, why bother putting that stress on myself? I'm happy just to chill and play it when I can. I think that's a better idea. Once I've got fast internet again, that might all change. If I get fast internet, then maybe I'll be like, no, I need to be first. I need to do everything first. It'll be much more exciting. A man cave. Everyone should have one, honking. I used to live in a place, in a house, where it was built into like a hillside. It's still in the city, but it was like built on a hillside. And that meant the like ground floor of the house was like up here. Sorry, for people who are listening to this as a podcast, I'm holding my hand up at eye height. And then the garden was like down here. So for podcast viewers, I'm now putting it at chin height. And basically that meant that there was like a big drop off from the back door down to the garden. And so they had built under like into the foundations of the house, they'd built what can only be described as an actual cave. Like, because it was all like, it had like soil on the ground and it had like the foundations of the house as the walls. It was like an actual cave. It wasn't a basement. It wasn't like an indoor part of the house. It was very much an outdoor area that was sheltered by the rest of the house as a cave. And so we used to joke, you know, at parties and stuff, that would be like, oh, we'll have the man cave, and, you know, we'd just like have a load of beers in there and like play different music in there to everywhere else. But it was like, I kind of miss having a cave. I kind of just liked it. It was a fun little curio. I like houses that have like an interesting feature like that. I think that's quite funny. And loads of you who have been watching me for a while will know that one of the things I like more than anything is stuff that's funny. Like in any, you know, whether it's a film, a TV show, life, a theme park, a video game, stuff that's funny is often the best things. I actually did a video, if you want to check it out, on my YouTube channel, of the most fun classes to play in Diablo. And most of my ranking revolves around the abilities that are funny. The top 2 picks on there are because those classes are very funny to play, and that makes them much, much more enjoyable. But yeah, I love the house we have now. Like, we actually own this house, which is nice. But it doesn't have anything funny about it. Like, that's what I really want. There's a lot of cats nearby, and they're quite funny. But yeah, I maybe one day I'll need to move into another house that's got something odd and funny about it. I used to live in a house that had a big balcony. It was like a penthouse apartment. That, you know, that sounds grander than it is. There's only like 3 floors. It wasn't that high up. But it was right in the middle of the city, and it overlooked this bridge where buskers like to be. And so nearly every morning you'd get woken up by someone playing the saxophone or someone singing like sea shanties or something like that. There was always something weird going on. Like, you'd wake up, sort of move the curtains and peer out the window, and you'd just see something like utterly bizarre happening outside. And because we were renting it, it had all of the landlord's furniture in. There was like a massive cow skin rug, and there was a massive like stag skull on the wall with antlers and everything. It was crazy. It was very, very odd decor, but it was funny, and so that was good. When people came around the house, and you'd be like, "Hey, look at that living room!" It had windows all around it, looking over the city, and then it had like the weirdest furniture. Loved it, absolutely amazing. Anyway, just going on to the last topic of the thing. I need to work on my segues. Do you know how segues are spelled? Does anyone in chat, do you know how to spell segue? Because it's something that I, as someone who did very well at English at school, went on to get an English A-level, went on to get an English degree, went on to learn how to teach English in secondary schools, and then taught English at secondary schools for 13 years. I don't think I actually knew how to spell segue until last month. No, not last month, last year maybe. It was like just before Christmas, I think. That I saw it written down somewhere. I was like, Sieg? What's a Sieg? That's weird. I always thought it was spelt like the things that you ride on, like the with the wheels. It was just an odd thing that I never had to write the word Segway. Like it never come up in my life. I had to write the word Segway. And yeah, I just saw it written down and was like, this isn't right. For anyone who doesn't know, you spell Segway S-E-G-U-E. That's super weird. That's not how English should work. But anyway, that is how that word works. So fine. But yeah, anyway, I need to work on my segues because I don't do them. Sometimes, I watch a lot of those YouTube channels that everyone watches, like Linus Tech Tips and Corridor Crew and stuff like that. And they make jokes a lot about their segues. And I always used to think that, on the IGN podcast, they do it too. And I always used to think, like, why are they making such a big deal of it? And now I realize it's because it's actually quite a hard thing to do, to make one topic flow into the next without having a bit where you stop and say, hey, so now I'm going to talk about something different. It's like, that's quite jarring and it's quite hard to do it. But yeah, segue, weird word. I'm bad at them. I will maybe get better one day. So the last thing I'd like to talk about, and chat, I would very much like some audience participation with this, is what games would you like to see remastered? We've recently had a lot of remasters. We've had the Dead Space remaster, that was received very well by all regards and was very much like a very close remaster to Dead Space. They updated some of the mechanics and they updated a little bit of like how you progress from different areas of the ship to each other and stuff like that. But the core of the game was essentially the same game. It felt like playing the same game. And Resident Evil 4 just released its remake and again received very well. Similar kind of deal. It's basically the original game, but there are tweaks, there are changes, there's ways it's been modernized. And I think that's quite a successful model. We've also just seen The Last of Us 1 remaster just released on PC. That's apparently how not to do it. Apparently it's like completely broken and doesn't work because Iron Galaxy developed a remaster and apparently their ports never work very well. But anyway, so what games would you like to see remastered now? I just saw UltraClart said, and I'm kind of glad that you said this. UltraClart just said, not really a fan of remasters, if I'm honest. I'd rather put the effort into a new game. That is 100% how I feel. Whenever they announce a remaster, I'm never like, oh, good, I can't wait for that. Like, if I think about a lot of the remasters that we've got to look forward to over the next few years, they've said that they're remastering Alan Wake. Are they doing, is it a new Alan Wake game? Or is it I think it's a remaster of the first one, isn't it? It's like, yeah, I played Alan Wake. I liked it. I guess I could play it again if I want to. What else did they announce? I'm sure there was some other thing. Oh, Silent Hill 2. Silent Hill 2 is being remastered. I think that's being made by the people who made Layers of Fear. Again, that's a game that I haven't played before, so I guess that would be more interesting to me. But I don't get super excited about it. I'd always prefer it to be a new game. That's not to say I haven't enjoyed remasters. The Dead Space remaster was fun. I enjoyed it. I'm quite enjoying Resident Evil 4 remaster. I don't think it's the best game ever, but it's all right. I really enjoyed the Mass Effect, like whatever you would call that. I don't know what you call the Legendary Edition of Mass Effect, but that was awesome, where it literally was the original games, but just they all ran better. And I think there was a couple of tiny tweaks to make them like control better and stuff like that, which was really cool. But yeah, I am 100% with you, UltraClart. I would always prefer game studios to make new games. It's the same thing with Call of Duty maps, where I don't understand why everyone wants them to re-release High Rise and re-release Terminal and re-release, Crash and whatever other maps people want. Because it's like, yeah, those maps were fun, but if we get new maps, there's a chance for a new map to be a new, as good as those maps were. And if we just get remakes, like kind of we have done with Modern Warfare 2, where we've had essentially one new map since the game came out, like we're not getting the opportunity for there to be any new classic maps. It's hard to think from the last, I don't know how many Call of Duties. of like a classic map that's from one of those. Instead, people are like, oh yeah, I really like Firing Range, I really like Jungle, I really like Crash, I really like Nuketown, I really like Shipment. And it's like, those, we've been playing those maps for like a decade now. Can we get some cool new things? Yeah, I would much rather they made new maps. But if we did have to have older ones, what games would be good? So, someone said Fable. So Alpha said Fable. Fable's an interesting one because, yeah, the new one, as far as I know, is not a remake. The new Fable game isn't a remake. It is kind of a reboot where I don't think it's going to be that much to do with Fable 1. I don't think it's going to be the same story or world or anything like that. Well, I mean, it'll be Albion still, but it won't be the same layout or anything. And it's being made by a completely different studio. It's Playground now instead of Lionhead. But Fable's an interesting one of like, would I want an actual remaster of that first game? Because Fable's a good example of a game where it's like, it was amazing for its time, but now the combat and the skill progression and everything would seem super basic, and I don't think a lot of the humor would translate as well. Like, if you kept the same dialogue, I think a lot of it wouldn't be that funny, because a lot of the thing that was funny about Fable was how subversive it was, and now being subversive is kind of the usual. Everything's bloody subversive now. So it's kind of, I don't think it would have the same impact for me. Red Dead Redemption 1 Ultraclart said, yeah, I would really love Red Dead Redemption 1 if it was on PC. Red Dead Redemption 1, if they managed to release it on PC, would be awesome. And, you know, if they just had it in the Red Dead 2 engine. For anyone who doesn't know, Red Dead Redemption 2 is actually a prequel to Red Dead Redemption 1. So if you could rebuild Red Dead Redemption 1 in the Red Dead 2 engine, it would just make sense as a sequel to it. So you could have Red Dead Redemption 1, 2, which would actually be a sequel to 2, even because 2 is a prequel to 1. It's very confusing. But yeah, I would love that. Red Dead Redemption 1 was an awesome game, but it has dated very badly. It controls badly. I mean, so does Red Dead 2, to be honest. But also, Red Dead 1 looks quite bad a lot of the time now, which would suck. Alan Findley, I think, is hitting the nail on the head for maybe the game I would most want a sort of Resident Evil-style remake of, and that's Metal Gear Solid 1. I've tried playing Metal Gear Solid 1 so many times, and I just don't like it because it controls badly. I really don't like the controls of it at all. I can kind of understand why people like the setting of it and some of the characters, and it's quite creative in places. And it definitely, if I'd played it at the time, because I didn't have a PlayStation when Metal Gear Solid came out, if I'd played Metal Gear Solid at the time, I think I probably would have loved it. But I don't know, like every time I've tried to go back and play it, it's just not that fun to play. So I would really like something like the Resident Evil remaster or Resident Evil 2 remaster, where like they take something that was very, very clunky and they completely update it so it's got the spirit of it, it's got the feel of it, but it looks gorgeous and it controls like a modern game. You know, just have it control like Metal Gear Solid 5 and I'd be happy. Metal Gear Solid 5 is the only Metal Gear Solid game I've really played a lot of, other than Revengeance, which is actually the only Metal Gear game that I've completed. But I know it's not a Metal Gear Solid game. But yeah, I would like it if they just went through all of the Metal Gear games and did a modern remaster of it. Obviously, you know, I'm really excited about Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2. Final Fantasy VII Remake is still, I would say, for me, the peak of remasters, because it's like, for anyone who hasn't played it, I don't want to spoil it, but the word remake doesn't mean what you think it does, and it's not exactly a remake. So it's like there's lots of things that are familiar from Final Fantasy VII in Final Fantasy VII Remake, you know, to the point, you know, lots of locations, lots of events and stuff like that are the same, but they do such interesting things with the story. Whether you've played the original or not, it still feels like a new game in lots of really positive ways. And it's like, I imagine that's an insane amount of work. I mean, they've essentially just created a new game for the Final Fantasy VII Remake, but God, that's interesting. Like, it's just such, I love games that make you think so much like that. And it's like, oh, I've been thinking about that ever since I finished Remake. I've just been like, oh, what's it mean? Like, where's it going to go next? Absolutely love it. Really like it. Assassin's Creed 1, why so salty, said. Assassin's Creed 1's an interesting one, because Assassin's Creed 1, like, essentially that is what they're doing with Mirage, isn't it? You know, it's a similar kind of setting, but it's going to have modern controls and stuff like that. Assassin's Creed 1 suffered a lot from being very repetitive, but one thing that I always remember about Assassin's Creed 1 that never got into any of the other Assassin's Creed games is something they showed off at E3, bringing us back around full circle to our first topic, was that with Assassin's Creed 1, a lot of the time, your missions were based around doing an assassination, and you were trying really hard to, like, find the target and then come up with a quick plan, like, come up with something in your head for how you're going to, like, take this guy out. And then you were trying to do it while also trying to find a path to escape. And if you planned it really well, you could take them out and get out of the city before the guards even knew you were really there. It would be a really fast sort of like jump in, kill them. I've got my route already planned. I'm going to run out up this bit of rubbish, get onto this rooftop, jump across these rooftops, get onto the wall and get out, get on my horse and go. That was awesome. And that never really happened on any of the other Assassin's Creed. The other Assassin's Creed sort of wanted you to be in long, drawn-out fights to show off all of the cool combat moves and stuff. But yeah, I didn't ever like that quite as much. So yeah, I think Assassin's Creed would be kind of interesting to do it, but I'm hoping that's what Mirage is going to be. So, Dishonored. I mean, Dishonored is still really good. My wife only just played Dishonored, and it still looks good. It still plays really good. I'm not sure that needs the remaster quite yet, but I would love more Dishonored games for sure. Darksiders would be cool as well, the first Darksiders. I never thought the sequels were that good. First Darksiders, if they cut it down to about half its length, I think would be absolutely amazing. Anyway, that's where we're going to call at it. So thank you very much for listening to the first episode of the podcast. We're going to try and keep these to an hour. They're going to be every weekday morning, unless something huge is going on. But most of the time, it'll be every weekday morning. You'll be able to catch the live recordings right here on youtube.com/Geeky Pastimes or kick.com/Geeky Pastimes, where you can become a member of either of those channels if you would like and support the channel. I very, very much appreciate it. And if you want to watch the VODs, they will all be on a fancy podcast playlist on YouTube, which you can just listen to as an audio podcast if you would like, and that would make me very happy. Let me know in the comments what you think of this. Let me know in the comments if you've got any suggestions for anything like that. Someone just said, are you ever going to have a guest? Yes, I would like to, Salty. Don't know whether it'll be like, famous guests, whether I'll try and get like, Mr. Waffle Waffles on, or try and get someone, maybe I'll try and get Doug from On Warzone on and we'll have an argument for an hour. Something like that. Or maybe it'll just be like, we'll just have like some of my friends on, have like Name Gear on one morning, have Flynn on or something like that. Who knows? But we might do stuff like that. We'll see how it goes. But let me know in the comments what you think of all of this. Let me know which games you'd like to see remastered, and if there's anything you'd like me to talk about tomorrow morning. So thank you very much, and goodbye. And I'll be back on with a stream in a little bit with Rockay City. So check that out in